I think we did have some consensus in that meeting.
Was I there when we discussed general?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Yeah, I think you were. It was with Jonathan.
I mean, I don't remember that conversation. It was ages ago, right?
Yeah, it's 3 weeks ago or something that Jonathan, or 2 weeks that Jonathan.
Oh yeah. Now I remember the conversation. Okay, good. I'm just amused that anarchy does not match definition. I beg to differ.
Which one?
Anarchy. The problem is there's many kinds of anarchy, a lot of which do have protocols, but
well, it's written in between lack of rules and processes.
Certain forms of anarchy.
Yeah.
Laws of physics not designed to promote specific goals unless you believe in the strong
I mean, it's clear what the assumptions are in between the brackets.
Yeah.
I actually thought of the same things, like, well, yeah, but it's clear enough what is intended.
Yeah. Jack pointed me to an absolutely fascinating article, totally off topic, by Wolfram about something he calls the, what is it again? The Ruliad or something like that. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, Felix is also joining.
The concept of the Ruliad. And it does, if I read it well, he's kind of making an argument for the strong anthropic principle, which was absolutely fascinating. He's kind of defining an abstraction of all formal systems, all rule systems as a global thing. It's quite cute. And and he claims to have not empirical, but like he's getting results towards unification of relativity and quantum physics doing that, which, wow. Anyway, so that's, as I said, totally off topic, but yeah, I can check that one off. I agree with all those little caveats.
Still a bit unclear where we're going to use this, but I mean, the fact that he wrote up a nice definition is good.
Yeah, and the programmable social protocol. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the main one he wanted to introduce, right? Because that's what they want to talk about on Wednesdays.
Should it be a subset of social protocol or of?
It is listed as a subset, I think. Yeah,
General.
It is. In the definition, it says or a subset.
Not in the definition I see.
No, in the definition of general social protocol, programmable is listed as a subset.
Yeah. Okay, cool. But then in programmable social protocol, it should say a social general protocol. Let me do that.
Why? I mean, the other way around makes more sense. Otherwise, we're introducing complexity in one definition that doesn't rely on the bigger one. I think it's good the way it is right now.
Before the specifics should point to the generic, not the other way around. I mean, if we're going to cut one, I'd cut the one on the generic.
We also don't point claim to standalone claim, just to give an example. And that's good because you.
No, but standalone claim points to claim.
Yeah.
No.
Because the definition builds on top of it, but it's different. Because a programmable social protocol is not a general social protocol. What is stated is that it's a subset of.
Well, then if it's a subset, it is a.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not gonna edit what you wrote.
Okay, I'll put it as a comment.
Yeah, definitely. That's the easiest.
I think it should explicitly say.
Timothy, are you there? Not yet.
I'm here. I'm having lunch.
All right.
In the background.
We noticed you didn't do your homework. You didn't go over the definitions in alignment. And we're just quickly checking whether we can check off our names there. I already did. I don't see any problems with the current ones. The main important ones for today, well, not for today, but for the process of today is usable and usable standalone claim, obviously. Which has been in there for quite some time.
Yeah, I'm extremely overworked right now, so move on and you know, I can go back and
Okay,
go over it when I get the chance.
let's see whether it matters.
Well, usable, there's no comment, so nobody contested it.
Yeah, I don't know why we didn't check that off. Maybe that was the outcome of one of the meetings. I don't remember. But yeah, I don't think we need it right now, unless, well, Felix is here. Maybe we can go over it with Felix, and then Timothy, you can see whether or not you agree.
Hello.
Hi, Felix.
Yeah, just too many meetings today, so I decided to take a walk and join the call. Yeah.
I guess that means you don't have any visuals.
No, I can see the screen on my phone when you share
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm not sharing it. Okay. Let me start by doing that. So one thing that's on the agenda, there's two things. One is emptying the alignment stuff a bit. There's a lot of stuff ready, good to go for consensus as far as I'm concerned. The other one is talking about what I introduced after a lengthy talk with Timothy on Slack, is the introduction of claim about fragments as a definition to talk about. So I suggest we start with something so it feels like we get some work done, so we don't get stuck immediately, and that's finishing up usable. Because I think we have consensus on that, but let's double check. So usable right now is a system instance of a domain type with which a given system will accept the formation of new structural links for that domain type. So usable is now an adjective of something in the system that can create structural links to other things in the system. And as examples, Mike and Tuan wrote up some things we agree on right now, that we all agree that an accepted standalone claim is usable. And we also agree that all accepted standalone claims are externally linkable. I don't know why that one is actually relevant, Mike and Tuan, because it doesn't use usable here.
Well, structural link is internal. Yeah, you may be right.
I think I'm gonna remove the second example.
I'm fine with that.
And
The first one is still good.
The definition implies that candidates in general are not usable until they're accepted, right? That's
No,
what
it does
saying.
not.
No, it doesn't. So these are examples. That's the nice thing. That we have agreement that all accepted standalone claims are usable and that all rejected standalone claims are not usable. But the candidate stuff, that's the whole thing where there might be disagreement. Or as far as we know, there is a disagreement right now whether or not standalone claims should be usable. But we agree on these two examples. That's why they're listed as examples. Just examples of what usable means.
Should we?
But then I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Should we put candidates in either we had a section for edge cases.
Some disagreement. It's not an edge case, right? Whether
that's what I'm wondering. Is it an edge case?
Claims should be usable or not. It's an example of how to use it.
Yeah. Is it disagreement, or does that mean it's going to be?
Actually, all of these are examples of how the definition can be used, right?
I think does not match definition does include usage of the third one certainly goes and does not match definition, in that you use the definition to say it does not match the definition.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I also understood it like that. I'm not too picky here. I'm just trying to say it. I think it's less disagreement as saying this is a choice of any system, right? Do edge cases. I think it's clear enough that, I mean, they serve as examples how the definition can be used.
But how is usable different from candidate then?
Because you can say if a candidate claim with the thing we want to discuss is a candidate claim usable?
Exactly.
In this system.
Okay, and
In this
that's why we introduced these definitions. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a like my problem with this definition, and maybe it's useful as a generic definition, is, as I said before, I think we need to go a step further, which is usable as. But maybe usable as is kind of an evolution of this definition.
Interesting. Because for me, the for that domain type in the definition means that usable means usable as in the way you mean it.
Well, for example, candidate claim, is it usable as the premise of an argument? Is it usable as the conclusion of an argument?
Okay, so usable for
Is
a
it
role
usable
as opposed to usable
as-
for a type. Got it. Okay.
I'm just adding it as a comment. I think for current discussions, we don't need it. Yeah, we can come back at that later.
Yeah, so instead of should be usable as something, it's usable as a role. I think it's different.
Let's stick with the examples before we try to name things we don't need yet.
Yeah.
So I just added it as a
comment.
Yeah. Any other comments, concerns?
No, not for me.
You already checked off my control. So I'm looking more to Felix and Timothy.
Yeah, please.
You can check me
for
out.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we're good to go with this one then. Then usable standalone claim, and that's why I said for a current definition, the Timothy's comment does not matter right now, because the only use case where we use usable standalone claim is in this one. Just I'll reread it for reference. As a web author, I want to link to a usable standalone claim in the claim repository so that my readers can support and oppose it, which is also visible to any web content linking to the same usable standalone claim. So yeah, whether or not something is usable as does not really matter here. We only consider the one use case where you can link to it essentially. Well, it's implying
In this
that
case,
as
it's
conclusion,
usable.
right? That's
I don't
what
know,
it's
because
implying.
are you talking about linkable, externally linkable, or internally linkable here?
I think it's, yeah, here, externally linkable and usable.
The internally linkable is given by usable.
So the use case here implies that it can be used as a conclusion essentially, because the point is that the readers can support and oppose it. But we haven't modeled that yet, so it's only implied. But for now, I think that's fine.
Right. Well, it's doing double service here, because I'm assuming it might also be usable as a premise.
Yeah, but that's not what is implied here. But yes, for now, we leave that open. So if there's ever a need to disambiguate what it should be usable as, then indeed we need to refine this one again, and we can revisit it like you commented.
Okay.
But so yeah, usable standalone claim is simply a system standalone claim, which is immutable, externally linkable, and usable. That's simply throwing everything together that we decomposed before, tailored to this user story.
Is that redundant in the sense that standalone claim is immutable, or is it standalone claim not immutable?
A standalone claim is not immutable. A standalone claim is aspirational.
Okay.
I'm rereading my comments, and I think they must have been made before the last version of the definition, because they don't make sense to me anymore.
November 11. Yeah, I'm not certain what you mean here.
Neither am I. So yeah, I think my objection doesn't stand. I'm thinking here we're clearly saying that candidates are fit the definition.
Yes, they do, because system can be candidate.
Okay. So do we want to distinguish the accepted and candidate usable standalone claim? But that's okay. I think it's
No, that's
it's
why
fine.
we introduced usable.
Yeah, that's yeah. Okay,
The whole point was
you know
that
what?
we agreed.
I'm happy.
We agreed that the user story required them to be usable, but we didn't agree which ones were usable, and that's what is the result right now.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm in.
Yeah, there was no disagreement with immutable. There was no disagreement with externally linkable, nor with usable. We also understand now why it has to be a standalone claim. More about that later, once we delve into claims about fragments. And yeah, it needs to be in the system, which now can simply means it can be rejected or candidate or accepted. And then there's a discussion which specific system claims should be usable. In summary. Felix, Timothy?
No objection.
I checked off your name.
I'm okay there. I guess, yes, check me out.
Wow.
Does that mean that we have some clear understanding of, yeah, I think we actually already had, was more of a naming thing. So I think user story 1 is well enough defined. We can later revisit claim repository. So that's good, because we're going to have to disambiguate this standalone claim later from some other stuff. The social protocols I'm going to skip for now because we don't need them. You can do that as homework, just look at it. I think Jonathan did a good job writing these up. So if there's no objection there, we can also start using these in discussions. So on to the new thing I added as proposed, which is claim about fragments. The past meetings, we tried to define what we ended up with as claim fragment inference. I decided to take a step back because I had a discussion with Timothy on Slack where a claim was made that such claims about fragments, or whatever you want to call them, claim fragment inference or contextual claim at some point, are standalone claims. And I wholeheartedly disagree there. I think even the point of introducing like the separate user story and fragments is to make clear that they're not standalone claims. And that's why I introduced this as a first step. Disregarding like which exact claim you are making about fragments, I want to first see whether there's agreement that such claims made about fragments are not standalone claims. So my current definition of a claim about fragment is a claim made about a fragment, which requires knowing about the media source within which the fragment occurs. That's in the abstract. I added a whole bunch of examples. But because you need to know about the media source, by definition, that means that it's not a standalone claim, since it relies on additional information not contained within the fragment. If you look at the definition of standalone claim, upon which so far we agree, it contains no indexical references outside of the shared immutable representation that are essential in order to express agreement or disagreements.
Yeah, I caution here that this, depending on the result of this conversation, the usefulness of standalone claim might be severely diminished because, again, I think it gets back to our definition of indexical, where to some degree, everything is indexable when you're referring to anything outside the system. You're assuming certain knowledge about things like President X, President Biden, right? You're indexing, referring to something outside. So bring this to the case of evidence, which is a main use case I think that we need to support. Is any claim or any supporting argument that uses evidence as its basis for support not going to be standalone?
I think I agree with the intent of what you're saying, Tim. The referring to an external thing or being or entity by name, I think should be perfectly fine in a standalone claim as long as this is well defined. What we wanted to avoid is the situation where, you know, I like him and him is floating without knowing about the source.
Like pronouns. Pronouns, I understand, but right.
Right. That was
referring
the
to a book. Yeah, if we're going to discuss a book, does that mean no standalone claim can reference a book?
Let's go to the examples to make it clear. So a claim about a fragment would be when Nietzsche wrote God is dead and thus spoke Zarathustra. How do you pronounce this thing?
Zarathustra, yes.
Zarathustra. He meant to say that the Enlightenment had eliminated the possibility of the existence of God. Like, if presuming that this is a fragment, right? God is dead in thus spoke Zarathustra, ideally on a page and an ISBN number and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Can you interpret this claim? Because this is a claim, right? This is a claim about a fragment.
Yes.
Can you interpret this without looking up the book?
Yes, provided you have knowledge of the book. Like any word, you're supposed to have knowledge.
Yeah, so let's go back to the definition of standalone claim. The claim should not require context for interpretation. So you're saying now you do need to know about the full book in order to
know about
interpret the claim.
the meaning of words and the entities being spoken about. Sure. I think what we were trying to avoid here is where you need pronoun reference. You need to go to the context to dereference pronouns. That's what we were trying to avoid in standalone claim.
Which is exactly outside of the shared immutable representation, because it's not part of a shared immutable representation what's being referred to.
The English language is outside of the shared immutable representation, and it's always assumed.
But that's even further. This is referring to a media source, which is not part of the shared immutable representation.
I'm saying it's exactly the same thing. Knowing the meaning of words and knowing the existence of the book is on the same level. It's about knowing something external to the bit stream of characters. You have to know the English language to interpret the sentence. I don't think that makes it non-standalone.
Let me ask you a question like this.
You can express that. That's why I added these. That's not much definition. Donald Trump said, grab him by the pussy. Yes, that can be a standalone claim. You can, this is a claim. Donald Trump said, grab him by the pussy. But at the same time, you can also say, when Donald Trump said, grab him by the pussy on the leaked tape recording, blah, 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 with a concrete fragment, this should be understood as that this is different. It is making a claim about a specific instance where it's said. It's not. Yep. It's not open for interpretation.
That makes it standalone.
It's not open for interpretation where he said it.
Okay, wait. A couple questions here. First, when did this definition become renamed to claim about fragment? Because it was claim fragment interpretation.
It's not renamed. This is on an abstract level, any claim about a fragment. So claim fragment inference or whatever that we're trying to define before is one type of claim about fragment, because we had so much discussion about what should a claim about the fragment be for the use case.
Let me propose something as an example of a claim about a fragment.
Yes.
The person depicted in the video is whatever, Professor X.
Is Einstein.
Is Einstein. Yeah, okay.
No, but the video this is not what Tim said. Or is it what
there is, okay, so the fragment is the video. The person depicted in this scene
we have agreement on what a fragment is,
and that's indexical and would not match definition. Are we agreed?
We have an agreement on what a fragment is, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we need something like this.
Yeah, by the way, it should probably be seconds 5 to 10 in a specific YouTube video.
Or the full video or whatever, but I mean,
Right.
it needs to
The
be.
person depicted in the third scene of this movie.
Oh, okay.
is-
So
Which
you have-
movie?
The character, let's see, the character appearing in the third scene of this movie is
Which
Professor X.
movie? How do you point to
Well,
this?
Okay, we're pointing at a fragment. So the character depicted in, and then in brackets, fragment. It doesn't matter what fragment, is Professor X.
Yes.
Okay, that's a claim about a fragment, right?
Mhm.
Another one would be brackets fragment has not been altered from its original content.
What? I'm not certain I get this one.
In the case of a video recording of the Kyle Rittenhouse video, the fragment depicts the original unaltered recording of Kyle Rittenhouse.
Something like that. I don't know. That's what he said,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that matches it as well. Sure.
Okay.
But the
Fragment clearly shows that Mr. Potato Head is racist. Okay, this very last one is an example of
all three of these last ones arguably do not match the definition, given that which requires knowing about the media source. I mean, all of these only point to the fragment, right? They could be standalone the way you put them here. Just like I wrote, Donald Trump said, "Grab him by the pussy." Sure, if you don't link to the actual audio tape where that happens. I'm not certain what you're doing here. Depending on what you exactly mean by these three, they might not match the definition indeed.
Okay, at some point, I'm trying to get at how evidence will be used in the system, right? And the question is evidence a standalone claim? Is use of evidence to prove a standalone claim?
Give an example of evidence and then we can go over that. But
fragment clearly shows that Mr. Potato Head is racist. Or fragment, in fragment, Mr. Potato Head used the N-word, right?
For me, those are all standalone, as long as the fragment has a good enough dereferenceable reference in it. As long as fragment is dereferenceable. And which all the cases we have, like thus spoke Zarathustra, is dereferenceable.
Okay, so you're saying that not all claims about fragment, excluding this from the definition, essentially. So you're saying essentially this should be renamed, because I mean, if you do assume that which requires knowing about the media source within which a fragment occurs, like these three last claims don't fit the definition. So you're essentially arguing the name is wrong, I think. Because yes, if all you need to see is the not the media source, but only the fragment, only the snippet, and you want to say like, oh, is Mr. Potato Head shown in this snippet? And you don't need to rely on the media source to make that judgment. Those are the examples you seem to give. But then it doesn't require knowing about the media source in which a fragment occurs. So in that sense, it's not fitting the definition that I added here.
Disagree.
With what?
I'm saying it requires knowing about the media source. I think that fragment of sentence is perfectly valid, and I would let it stand. But for me, this knowing about the media source has nothing to do with standalone. It's a difference between being able to dereference, which I think you need, and being able to and actually reading up the media source or following the reference and acquainting yourself with the content, which for me has nothing to do with standalone or not standalone. It has to do with, okay, you need some background knowledge, which is always true, and you need more or less background knowledge. In this case, you need specific background knowledge.
But the whole point of a standalone claim is that you don't need background knowledge. If you go back to the definition of standalone claim, it stands on its own.
So there was a misunderstanding on standalone claim.
I don't think there was.
It just shows how we can spend all this time defining something and disagree on what it means. It's a fascinating example.
The whole point of a standalone claim is that it's clearly delineated.
Yes.
What has to be assumed as shared assumptions, and
Yes.
anything else is open for discussion. That is the whole point of a standalone claim.
That is absolutely correct, as you stated it, but that does not mean that all those shared assumptions are contained in the standalone claim, because then the standalone claim would have to contain all definitions of all the words of all the English language.
Which they can do. And that's the generic to specific standalone claim.
What I'm saying is it's perfectly valid for the standalone claim to have precise external reference and still be standalone, in that you don't need to.
I think we have examples of that. We should actually have examples of that. I agree with you there, Marc-Antoine. It's totally fine to have precise definitions in your standalone claim. And yes, we agree that there can be.
It's not what I said. You have precise reference to external knowledge. Not included. A reference to not included external knowledge.
Yeah, then I think we need to go back to mutability.
Oh, I'm even happy with immutable external knowledge. That's fine. I'm perfectly fine with that. But I'm saying not all the knowledge referred to by the standalone claim needs to be included, as long as it's a precise immutable reference.
And if it's clearly delineated, because that's the problem. If you don't clearly delineate what you are including as standaloneness or not. And that's what happens with a media source, because you have a fragment. Yes, the fragment is clearly delineated. The media source isn't, right? Do you agree on that?
Nope. I think in the fragment, the media source should be clearly delineated. Otherwise, it's not a valid fragment.
No, but how do you know for a claim about a fragment which parts of the media source you need to consider or not?
I mean, maybe it depends on the structure of the claim.
Because the fragment delineated clearly. That's what you asked me. I answered. I said, yes, it should be clearly delineated in the fragment definition.
Right.
And you say, how do you know? Well, because it's clearly delineated.
So you're saying when Nietzsche wrote God is Dead and thus spoke Zarathustra?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. For example, let me take a totally separate case, right? A standalone claim, right? Where Mr. Potato Head is guilty of the murder of little Bo Peep. Okay. Is that a standalone claim?
It can be. It depends how you.
Yes, that's a standalone claim.
Okay. So, the arguments that you're going to bring in, you could say, well, you have to know who Mr. Potato Head is and who's little Bo Peep, and you need to know all the facts about the trial in order to make up your mind about that. But no, that's the whole point of a standalone claim.
Yes, exactly.
You've made the claim, you understand what you're talking about, and then people come in and place evidence, right?
Yes, but now we're adding
arguments for and against.
So now we're adding fragments. Now we're adding specific links to external places, etc.
And then this is what I'm saying is at some point in your proof that Mr. Potato Head did it, you're going to want to bring in evidence. And how are you going to bring in evidence in a standalone claim format without referring to outside sources?
Because I don't think we're talking about this here anymore, right? As a reader of a media source, I want to highlight a fragment and suggest it. So let's, since you're clearly thinking of a different use case, let's write it up.
Yes, it's a totally separate use case.
So let's write that up first and before we continue, because we're getting sidetracked from user story 4 right now.
No, we are talking about 4. At least I think we're talking about 4.
I don't see how evidence fits in here.
That
is exactly the evidence thing. If you point to a place and you're saying, in this place, this is where this claim appears, then the person has to judge, okay, well, do I think this is a place that, you know, that I trust to create that claim? And if you think so, like if you just love CNN, anything you see written there you trust, you're like, okay, yeah, that is what that says on CNN.com, must be true. Or you know, or whatever, you know, maybe, oh, it's this author, I know this author is very reliable on this fact, on this, you know, topic. Okay, let's see, yeah, this he's saying that or she's saying that, it's on this topic, authoritative, thumbs up. You know, like that is what evidence is looking at sources, interpreting what is the, I mean, what people should be doing is interpreting what is the standalone claim. That's what this system, I think that the system is really doing, is asking people to think in terms of standalone claims. Like, what's the person really saying? And then what does that imply? Or how does that relate to other claims? But I think we're still talking about 4. Well, what I think is a little confusing about this conversation is that, for me at least, is that we're sort of mixing in we're putting the fragments in the text versus being more clear about like what are the system relationships. So I mean, the way I've always thought about this, doesn't mean it's right, but the way I've always thought about it is the standalone claim is there, and then the system says, you know, hey, there's this, you know, edge, this, you know, relationship between this claim and then this fragment over here, but it wouldn't appear literally in the written text. It wouldn't say, you know, in this thing.
Right. This is why my vision, like my vision of the design of this, I see this totally being analogous to use of definitions. The statement, the text says the words it says, the statement, and yet you attach to it definitions that are going to narrow down what is being meant by that statement. And it's the same thing when you're sourcing from outside sources. A fragment is this, it's indexical because it's this thing, but that this thing has been fully defined. Just like I could say, he killed her. Well, if I throw in definitions of who he is and who she is, the statement is indexical, but the claim is no longer indexical because it's all there. It can be standalone.
But it is still in, no.
Where you do have a valid point, Stephen, is I did check the definition of fragment, and it is true that fragment can be ambiguous. So I'm proposing we create a precise fragment or some other definition to say a very well-defined fragment where there's no ambiguity, it's immutable, yada, yada, yada. And then claim about fragment, the really interesting one will be claim about precise fragment. And then we know that this is a standalone claim.
I don't know what a precise fragment is.
That's what I'm trying to say. Precise fragment is, as you asked me, I said, you know, I think fragment should be well-defined media source, well-defined part of the media source. And here we admitted that the fragment could be ambiguous. So maybe let's have a subclass of fragments which are precise, where the media source and the identifier, everything is perfectly well-defined. And these are the ones I care about. And the claims.
What do you mean by well-defined? So you mean, so retrieval using identifier may fail?
Yeah.
It would be ambiguous.
Exactly. So it would not fail and not be ambiguous. That's what I mean by precise fragment.
I think
yes.
Defining it in terms of won't fail, if I understood correctly. I mean, it's too hopeful or optimistic, because I mean, a link that works today doesn't work tomorrow. I don't know, like, there's so many ways that fair, but the fragment is kind of like a process.
A link is not good enough for me, by the way, because links don't refer to immutable structures. A CID could fail, but at least it won't give me something new. So I would make that part of the definition.
Well, what about all those things down there? What about a web annotation target, a spatial region, and an image?
Yeah,
are those all okay?
In a precise fragment, I would say that it's a requirement that you point to an immutable external resource. And if it's not immutable, you make it immutable by caching it and making that cache
Then
reference part of
the
fragment.
claim is, yeah, then you have
But
to
then it
cache the
just
entire
becomes-
media source. And
it just becomes immutable by trusting the cache. I mean, nothing is immutable, right? Like there could be a system failure and they lose the image. They could accidentally replace
yeah, what I
it.
said before, what do you cache? Because it's not standalone, what do you cache? Do you cache the one page that you link? Do you cache all the hyperlinks to the page? Do you cache the entire internet? What do you delineate? That's the whole problem.
Well, I mean, you could figure that
That's a
out
fair
per
comment.
item. You can figure that out per item.
Just to reply to Carl first, when you say, how do you trust the cache? That's what CIDs are for.
I don't know what a CID is. Let me
Oh,
look it
sorry.
up.
Content identifier as defined in IPFS, where basically it's a hash of the file. So if you
retrieve
hash,
it, you can check whether or not it's still the same. Since I mean that's solvable.
Okay.
I think that's a separate discussion.
Yeah.
So you can see whether it's still the same as original. But
yeah. So you use the hash as an identifier. You use a long enough hash. They use SHA-256, and they are basically making the point that those are practically unique, and you can use them as identifiers.
But we're missing the point here. A standalone claim had a certain intent. So
Yes.
the question is still whether or not like claims about fragments that essentially require you to retrieve the media source are standalone claims or not.
And I'm saying yes. And me and Tim are saying yes, you're saying no. So we're having that argument about what do we mean by standalone, and do we allow well-defined external references to be part of a standalone claim? And I say necessarily, because otherwise no claim is standalone.
I agree, but I think that's different, because what you're saying is that the media source is fully defined.
Yes.
So you're essentially saying that it's not necessarily a fragment as defined here. It's more like, yes, everything that is within the fragment is part of the standalone claim. So in other words, the standalone claim contains a video within it, but it doesn't necessarily say that video originates in a certain place, because yes, sure, if you have a claim with a video in it as standalone, but you don't need to retrieve an external website or look at anything else in the video, sure, it's standalone. But if you look at the use cases here, it does require you to get the book Thus Spoke Zarathustra, etc., and read the entire book in order to have a discussion.
I disagree. I disagree with that.
So do
because exactly what you would have is what you would have in a debate in a standalone claim, which is you could go without having read the book and see that claim and go look at the supporting and opposing arguments. That's the whole point of the canonical debate, is some subject you're totally new to, you go and you see a claim about it, and by seeing the arguments for and against, you start to understand. I mean, sure, you have to know what the book is. You get that through the definitions if you need to, if you don't know what's going on, right? But you can make a standalone claim about that and see the argument going on. You don't have to have read the book to know. You have to have read the book to make some useful arguments. But any subject, you have to know something about the subject to be useful in contributing to the debate.
Up to a point, you can think of the fragment as a claim. I'm claiming that the sentence, God is dead, is in the book Thus Spoke.
No, don't go there. The fragment is a fragment. And yes, you can make a claim about fragments, etc., right? That's what we're defining.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is there's an underlying claim in the fragment. But you're right, maybe don't go there. Fair enough. But I'm still standing by the basic statement that a reference, like when you say contains a video, if I say contain a video or contains a unambiguous reference, it contains an unambiguous reference to a video, for me, those are the same. Because otherwise, the boundary problem you ask is perfectly valid. You made a good point about the boundary problem. And this is where I keep saying, then you'll have to drag in the whole of knowledge to make it a standalone claim, which is obviously ridiculous because nothing will ever be standalone.
No. You don't have to drag in the whole of knowledge. Difference
yes,
is everything that's in the standalone claim is not open for discussion. If that's the definition being used in the standalone claim, it's included. If it's not included, Yes, you can
Every
argue for it's
single
ambiguous.
word meaning is open for
Yeah.
discussion, as
Yeah.
we are discovering in this forum.
So there's no
So the
disagreement.
meaning
There's no
of every
disagreement
word and the
with
meaning
that.
of every word and the definition of every word, and recursively until you have the whole of knowledge of
Yes,
humanity.
there's no disagreement there. But if you link to an external source,
Yes,
the external source brings in extra context where,
yes.
so
all-
you're saying if you
If you
link to an
use a
external source,
word, the word brings extra context. I don't get the difference.
the difference is you're arguing that the entire media source should be included, essentially. Which, yes, that's possible. But I'm arguing at that point, I wouldn't call it a fragment anymore. I would call it a standalone claim that includes the entire book, which is different.
It's not contained, it's referred to. It's
Yeah.
different. You keep saying
Okay, but
it's-
contained in the sense that it's immutable, right? Contained in the sense that it's always there. Contained in the sense that it doesn't change, that
yeah, but that's not what I
clearly
mean by contained.
delineated.
Okay, we're arguing in contained, but whatever.
Because that's where the problem lies. That's why I originally indeed wanted immutable to be part of standalone claim, because the standalone claim only works if it's, in my opinion, immutable. Because if you link to a website through a fragment, the website can change, it's mutable. So the whole point of...
And this is why I'm perfectly happy to say, let's have a different version of fragment. We have defined fragment one way, and I think it's valid and it's useful. Now let's define another concept, which is the precise fragment. And let's put the bloody hash in that definition so that we know the fragment refers to something immutable.
Mm.
If
Are you going to hash the entire internet? What are you going to hash?
The whole book or the video or whatever.
So who draws that line? That's the whole question. When you create a claim in a source, where's the boundary of the source?
Who draws that line is a perfectly valid question, but it has many valid answers. If I say, I'll take the text of the book and hash that, that's a valid answer. If you say, oh, do you include the publication date or not? Whether you do or not doesn't matter, because whether you do or not is still a valid answer. The question is, you can point to something and say, you can check whether it's the right thing or not. And yes, there can be many slightly different versions, but they don't differ in a way that's important, is that they contain the fragment. And you can check that the fragment is there. So it's not because there's many answers that the question is not well defined. I think the notion of
no, you can check the fragment is there, but you can't check that media source the fragment appears in is different or has changed, right?
No, that's not what, no, I disagree with that. I disagree with that. You can say, here is what I choose to refer to. And yes, you can have chosen a different boundary. And we can agree that, yes, those boundaries are functionally equivalent, even if the hash is different, because we took a slightly different boundary, at least with respect to that fragment. That's good enough for me.
I'm wondering if Stephen is referring to, like, if I'm referring to a book and that book refers to another book, then
yeah,
obviously if I hash the book, then it doesn't contain the hash of the other book. Okay, book is maybe not a good idea because
so
like
paper and citations.
Yeah, let's say I link to a website and hash that website, and that website links to another website, which is critical to understand that first website. So that means like the second website is not hashed. And the question of Stephen's like, okay, how far do we go? Do we recursively hash everything?
True, but I will argue that it's irrelevant. When we speak of a claim, of a fragment, we are saying this bit of text is in this book. And that's kind of all we're claiming. It's true, absolutely true, that full understanding of the meaning of that bit of text, let me finish, could require yet more knowledge, but that's irrelevant to the base claim of the fragment, which is this bit of text is in this book. And you don't need the references for that. You may need the references for a full understanding, just as you need the English language to understand the sentence. Same difference. But you're still able to say this fragment is there and it's a standalone claim.
But it's not a fragment. You're making a claim out of a fragment. The point is a fragment clearly. Yeah, I don't know how to explain this. Maybe let's jump ahead a bit and or back several months, if you will, because the whole point is I don't think I want to add claims about fragments as supporting arguments. I only want to add standalone claims as supporting arguments.
So the question is how to make claims about fragments standalone, and that's what we keep trying to do. And you
which is possible. No, I'm not resisting that. I'm saying the way you do that is by including everything within the standalone claim, not by not having clearly defined boundaries, which you keep saying is possible. But I think Felix highlighted definite issues with how to do that.
And I think the issues are with a use case, which is not mine.
I want to go back a second to what you said, Stephen, that your intention was to have standalone claims supported or opposed by other standalone claims, right?
Yeah, and I don't want non-standalone claims, whatever that means, because now
okay,
there's
but
disagreement on what
so
it
my
means.
question for you is this: how do you plan supporting evidence in this scheme?
Give me one example of evidence.
Any video clip. You're
adding
saying
evidence is probably
here's a video of Mr.
Potato
Potato Head. Here's a video of Mr. Potato Head killing Little Bo Peep. I have the video evidence of Mr. Potato Head killing Little Bo Peep. Therefore, conclusion: Mr. Potato Head killed Little Bo.
Well, nothing prevents supporting adding evidence if that's what you're looking for, and those are.
I'm asking you, where is the line between standalone claims and the video with the supporting evidence? How does that fit into the system if we only have standalone claims and if fragments?
But is a video a claim?
A video is not a claim.
Okay.
You're making a claim about a video that, and this is where I see fragments as supporting lots of debates if you're going to use them. Provenance, you have to debate the provenance. Where did this video come from? Was this video altered? Are those really the people you're stating they are in the video? Is this really an action of him killing her, or are they just playing? All these things are arguments about this piece of evidence that you're trying to introduce as evidence that he killed her, right? And at some point, that video is central to the argument that he killed her, the proof, right? And I don't like if videos can't, if fragments can't be part of a standalone claim, I don't see where that fits into that structure.
But that's why I'm saying maybe we should write up the use case of adding evidence, and it's perfectly possible that adding evidence is a separate use case from adding a supporting claim. Why does it have to be a supporting claim? Why can't you add evidence to a claim? For example, I mean, I'm just.
You can. It's something to be discussed. But what I'm saying is that we're talking about what is it? Claims about a fragment, right? Claim about fragment.
Yeah. But that's not what you. If you want to add evidence, you want to add a video to a claim, then you probably to me it doesn't sound like you're adding a standalone claim. It sounds like you're adding a video to a claim. And then evidence can be a video, but that's a different use case.
I disagree. What you're doing is you're making claims about a fragment, that it shows this, that it shows that it shows whatever. And in the case where you want to use it as proof for something, you say this shows that, therefore conclusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
This shows Mr. Potato Head killing Little Bo Peep, therefore. Right. So your claim is this video shows Mr. Potato killing Little Bo.
Yeah.
That becomes a premise for your conclusion.
I'm not against adding. First of all, I see what you mean. So you're talking about fragments. This fragment clearly shows that Mr. Potato Head is racist. Remember that I said I don't think this fits a definition because it does not require knowing about the media source within which a fragment occurs. All you need in this case is the fragments. And yes, like I said before, I think you can create a standalone claim with a fragment in it, but that's not what I'm trying to define here as a claim about a fragment. Examples of claims about fragments require understanding outside of a fragment the media source the fragment occurs in. So this is not an ideal name. I'll give you that, but do you see the difference? If all you need is the fragments, like your evidence examples.
Okay,
Yes.
but wait,
Then I'm going to
wait.
argue that probably is a standalone claim.
I would argue that your example is not a claim about a fragment.
Which example?
When Nietzsche wrote God is dead and thus spoke Zarathustra, right? What you're actually doing is you are making a claim. Yeah, see, I don't think that's a fragment reference. Because
No, but
really,
it is,
people aren't debating a
it is a
specific
link.
copy of a book. People are debating
No, but it is.
the
It
larger
is.
concept of the book, not that print right there. They're debating. It
No,
doesn't matter if you take a hash. You know, you have first edition, third print, fourth print, fifth print, and all the text in there is going to give you different hashes. But you don't want to restart the debate every time there's a new copy made.
No, but you
of
link to a
that book.
specific
You're
copy.
talking about,
It is a fragment.
no, okay. In this case, you
No,
link to a specific copy. But
Tim,
it's
here
not-
I'll disagree. Sorry. Let me remember that all this came from the conversation about interpretation, saying when Nietzsche's made that utterance, what did he mean, and can this be interpreted as this other claim or that other claim? So
Yes.
in that sense, for me, when Nietzsche said God is dead and thus spoke Zarathustra, it's a vague fragment reference, but it is a fragment reference.
Assume
But
it's
this is
modeled
covered- wait, but-
correctly
but-
as
One second, I'm not
exact.
done. We can replace it with a more precise one that speaks about addition, this and that, and
Okay.
hash numbers and immutability, yada, yada, yada. But for me, this is a valid, vague, mostly an ambiguous fragment reference. We're saying this sentence used in this context, what did the author mean? And that was the original question.
Okay, but, and I have to go because I have an important meeting now, but we already have a definition for that, which is claim fragment interpretation or inference for that specific case. And this is supposed to be a larger, more abstract definition that
Generic.
covers more than that, right? And that's where I'm saying, well, then it gets into these other issues that are outside the use case, but I can't accept that definition because I see where it's going in the general scheme of things. And I think it never being a standalone it doesn't work for me. And I think there's also
what never being
issues
a
I have with
standalone.
a claim about a fragment.
Yeah, but what is a claim about a fragment to you?
Well,
Because
okay,
the
then
examples
I
you gave don't
object
fit
about
the definition that I gave.
Yeah. First of all, claim about fragment. I don't, and perhaps it's the name. I don't think the definition matches the name. Right.
I agree with that.
So that's possibly the problem. But there's a second problem here, which is that what you're talking about are claims about a larger base of knowledge. And that somehow you require knowing that base of knowledge in order to understand the claim or talk about it or whatever. And I think that's every standalone claim. That's the problem that we've been talking about this hour is every standalone claim for you to interact with it reasonably requires you to have more information than what's in that.
Okay, but
sentence.
let me clearly delineate the difference. In a standalone claim, we recognize that, yes, and again, there's no disagreement on that. But the difference is that any other plausible interpretation is within scope, if you will. Every plausible thing can be brought up as a relevant argument. It's standalone. So you can't say, no, that's not what well, if you bring it up, that's not what was meant, then that's one specific case. It doesn't necessarily negate more ambiguous, broader, abstract claim, as opposed to claim by fragment context I just added, because indeed it was a wrong name. Here it is about one specific context, and in order to interpret the context, you need to go there, and there's only one specific context.
Okay, Stephen, I understand the problem.
Delineated.
I understand the problem. I still disagree with you. First, I'm saying all your examples for me are standalone claims. And the distinction you bring would be about, do I have to know the context of you saying the whole first sentence? When Nietzsche wrote this, he meant to say the Enlightenment had eliminated the possibility of the existence of God. Do I need to know the context of that sentence to understand it? And this is, I don't think so. And this is why I'm saying it's a standalone claim or standalone enough. Whereas if Stephen said, quote, when Nietzsche said, "Where is that? Das Pogs are," and he said it in this context, and I need that context to understand why you said that God is dead meant this. This is where, indeed, that would make it not standalone.
Okay, I gotta go, guys.
See, I couldn't fully follow there.
Okay, what I'm saying is, this is really about meta claims, and now I understand the confusion. Okay, first, this God is dead in Das Pogs Zarathustra says fragment is contextual, we agree. However, the fragment as a whole, because it's well-defined enough, I'm arguing it's well-defined enough. And that means, for me, the whole blob, the first sentence, your first bullet point, for me, it's a standalone claim. And when you say the difference between standalone and not standalone is, do you need the context to interpret it? I would say I agree, but here is the it is the whole sentence, not God is dead, but when Nietzsche wrote blah, 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 blah. Do you need context to interpret that whole sentence? And I say no, and that's what makes it standalone.
Why not? Like, what if, okay, let's assume here, and I haven't read this, but let's assume that Nietzsche wrote, well, I know that Nietzsche wrote God is Dead in 2 different books, in Das Pogs Zarathustra and also in another one.
Yeah.
Maybe he had a slight different meaning in both, but both fragments only contain God is Dead. So you need to understand the context of the full book to know whether or not in that full book he meant one thing or the other, right?
Absolutely correct. That's external knowledge that has nothing to do with, do you need context to understand why you would have said that God is dead is meant to be interpreted this way, which is the upper level claim. I'm saying there's 2 claims here. There's God is dead, the lower level claim.
There's not, let's make sure there's not, the claim about fragment context is the whole one. It's the whole thing. This is the example. So the claim about fragment context is not God is dead. It's when Nietzsche wrote God is dead, blah, blah, blah. He meant to say that.
Right,
correct?
right. And I'm saying that is not context dependent, particularly. There's no dangling,
But
pronoun.
how can you decide that he meant to say one thing or another without reading the book?
I perfectly agree with you. I have to read the book. I have to have external knowledge. But having external knowledge is not the same as, without access to the knowledge, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. Like if instead of when Nietzsche, you said, when someone wrote God is dead, he meant to say, like, okay, who's someone? I have no clue if that is true or not, because I don't know who someone is, right? And I'd have to know the context. Or when he wrote God is dead, he meant blah, blah, blah.
Sorry, but that wouldn't be a standalone claim because it's indexical.
Yeah, that would be indexical. But when you say clearly God is Nietzsche in this book, that's not indexical. There's an external reference, which I have to know. It's background knowledge, and maybe I don't have it, and I have to regain it.
It's not part of the shared immutable representation. The standalone claim has a shared immutable representation. And the only thing that's contained as part of a shared immutable representation is the fragment, not the entire book. That's the difference.
That are essential. Let me look again at standalone claim.
So a claim, you first have to go to claim, I think. Shared representation, blah, blah, blah.
Contains no indexical references outside of the immutable that are essential in order to express agreement or... Okay.
What is the shared immutable representation? That's the question here. It's only the fragment. It doesn't contain a full book. That's the distinction.
I just unticked myself from standalone claim and put it back in alignment. Sorry, I don't.
Yeah, no, but it's good because that's essentially what this is coming down to.
Yep. Okay, I also have to go. I've got another meeting in 20 minutes. And
okay, see you next time.
See you next time. Ciao, ciao.